Thai, dear Sangha. Thank you for inviting me to share with you today. I have a lot to share, so I'll just share a little bit, and I'd be happy to share again another time if folks would like that. Um, I'm nerdy and passionate about these teachings, and I spent 4 years redacting them into English to share them with Westerners, and it was really, really challenging. And I'm glad that I finished the project. It's been about a year now since I finished. Yeah. Um, so I think I said this before, and you probably, most of you heard, but I met the Venerable in 2004 when my husband Bruce was ill. And he was really kind as far as giving us personal guidance on dealing with my husband's, impending death, basically. At that point, he was very, very sick and had stage 4 cancer and was very close to death. And we were freaking out, and we had little kids, and it was unexpected, of course, and really hard to deal with. And he took a lot of time sharing teachings with us and meeting with us. And he even came to our home once, which was really amazing, to meet with us, and was very helpful to Bruce and to me. It gave us a lot of spiritual guidance. And so I feel and I felt very indebted to him. So when he asked me after that experience if I would be willing to help him bring some of his teachings into English, I said I would. And I thought, when he presented it to me, it was in the context of being with another person who's bilingual, Vietnamese and English speaking. And I thought it would be something that the two of us would work on together. But she ended up not having time or interest or energy for it. So I just forged ahead on my own and did the best I could. And I got very good responses after the first book. So he asked me to do a second and then the third. So far I've done 3 books with him. And the one I'm going to talk about today is the 42 Chapter Sutra, Core Teachings of the Buddha, Zen Talks by Thich Phuoc Tinh. And he feels that this is a super, super, super important sutra, and it's very little known in the West. And so he taught a class at Deer Park on it, at first for monastics, but then opened it up to lay people and got a very, very good response. And so he transcribed his recordings of those talks and made a book in Vietnamese. And then he asked 2 of his students, unbeknownst to each other, to translate it into English. And they each came up with 400-page translations. One of them, it took her 4 years. And then he gave me on a little flash drive the 2 translations and asked me to redact them into English for a Western audience. So it was a very challenging assignment. But he feels it's so important because of a lot of reasons. But it's the first teachings of the Buddha that went into China, and then and it's very early teachings, and then it's also foundational for Mahayana Buddhism and the Buddhism that ended up traveling through China to other Southeast Asian countries. Um, and also, it's kind of like the greatest hits of the Buddha, the ancestral teachers who took Buddhism into China wanted to present in their first translation into Chinese the main teachings. So they're basically 42 chapters with 1 prelude, and each chapter in Chinese is a tetrad, 4 lines with 4 characters per line. And he's the Venerable's like quite a scholar in Chinese, and so translated these into Vietnamese and then into English. So in Vietnam now, where the Venerable's from, where he has spent most of his life as a monk and a Dharma teacher and an abbot at a temple in Dalat. These 42 chapters sutra are the first thing that monastics study in their monastic training, and they usually spend 18 months on this sutra, so their first 18 months on it. So it's a big deal in, in Eastern countries, but I don't think many people have heard of it here. I had never heard of it. I had never had any exposure with it. I don't know of any full-length commentaries like this one in English. So he just really wanted it to be available to Westerners. He's very passionate about spreading the Dharma to the West, and he sees me as an ambassador to help him do that because I'm a Westerner, and he feels that the people who are going to be best at sharing Buddhism with Westerners are other Westerners. So I feel honored to be entrusted with this assignment. It's, as I say, it's been challenging, but I've learned a lot. So just a little bit of history about the sutra, and then I'll share some of the chapters with you, and we'll just get a taste for it today. And as I say, I'd be very, very happy to share more in the future if you're interested. So this sutra traveled into China sometime between 317 and 420 of the Common Era. So Buddhism was there before Bodhidharma supposedly introduced Buddhism to China later on. There's a myth that these two monks traveled into China and translated this sutra from, I guess, Sanskrit or Pali into Chinese. But historically, it looks like this sutra was actually composed in Chinese, that there's no equivalent in Sanskrit or Pali of the 42 chapter sutra, that it was originally composed in Chinese for a Chinese audience using Chinese folklore and customs and belief systems to help introduce these ideas to Chinese people. So that's also kind of an example of how when Buddhism has traveled to new countries, it's modified, it's changed, it takes on the flavor of the country so that it's more palatable to the people in that country, in their language. So that is a little bit of background, and out of the 42, I just kind of picked a few that I thought were interesting to share. I can't remember exactly how many, but something like something like about 20 of them are about desire. It's very heavy on avoiding desire and how desire is a big problem in our life of practice. So I'll probably just read one or two of those because it gets a little bit repetitive. And, when they're translated, they're not 4 lines anymore. They're a lot of words. I tried to make it as short as possible, but in order to get the meaning across, you sometimes need to use a lot of words. So I'll just kind of go through in order and share some with you, yeah. So this is number 13, chapter 13. And one more thing, that this sutra is different in that it's not like the other sutras where there's a setting and a story and a place and the Buddha, said such and such and such and such. They're just very pithy, and they're very out of context and not even in any kind of order, really. It's just like the Buddha said this, the Buddha said that, the Buddha said this, the Buddha said that. So a monk asked the Buddha, what enables one to know past lives and to attain the ultimate fruits of the spiritual path? The Buddha said, by purifying your mind and being diligent in purpose, you will attain the ultimate fruits of the spiritual path. Just like polishing the dust off a mirror, the mirror reflects the bright light. By eliminating your passions and seeking nothing, the past will be revealed to you. So, I mean, that's kind of a common story about the mirror, and we know other ancestral teachers who talk about the mirror and polishing the mirror and taking the dust off the mirror, but you know, that's here. This is number 14. A monk asked the Buddha, "What is good? What is the greatest?" The Buddha answered, "To practice the path and abide in the truth are good. Living in accordance with the truth is the greatest." And then there's a whole lecture on each chapter. So I'm like really just skimming the surface here. I'll read a few, and then, you know, if you have questions or want to hear more about things, we can go more deeply into them. 17. The Buddha taught, "He who has seen the path can be compared to a person bringing a lantern into a dark house. Darkness instantly disappears. Light alone remains. While practicing the path, if practitioners can see the truth, their ignorance is ended and the light of wisdom abides forever." This is 21. The Buddha taught, "Those who seek fame instead of the truth waste their lives. By the time fame is acquired, one's youth is gone. Fame is like a stick of incense. The fragrance is pleasing, but fire burns up the stick, leaving nothing but ashes." And then here's one on desire. This is pretty characteristic of all the ones on desire, but they're all kind of like this. 24. The Buddha taught, "There is no desire stronger than the desire for sex. It has no equal. Fortunately, there is only one desire that is this strong. If there were more, no one in the world would be able to cultivate the path." And then here's another one, 25. The Buddha taught, "Those who are bound by passion are like one who holds a lit torch into the wind. The flames will blow back and burn them." And here's another fire image one. This is number 30. The Buddha taught, "Practitioners are like people carrying hay. They need to stay far away from fire. Likewise, when encountering desires, practitioners must stay far away." And then here are a couple longer ones that I kind of like. The Buddha taught, this is 33, the Buddha taught, "Those who follow the path are like warriors fighting 10,000 enemies single-handedly. They put on their armor and go into battle. Some among them are faint-hearted and will go part of the way and retreat. Some may be killed in combat. Some will return victorious. Practitioners who follow the path should be resolute, diligent, and courageous, not fearing the future, overcoming all obstacles. They attain the truth." I like that one. Sometimes it does feel like battle against 10,000 enemies single-handedly. And just on a little side note, when I went to Australia with the Venerable, I mentioned when I spoke last time about it, he's received the lamp from Thai in the Plum Village tradition, but his tradition is really the True Glam bamboo forest tradition. And so he really knows and appreciates and teaches Thai's Buddhism, but he also teaches this other kind of twist on Buddhism, and there are some differences. There are also a lot of real stylistic differences between the way he teaches and the way Thai teaches. He talks very fast and jams a lot into his talks, and the interpreters can usually hardly keep up with him. And and he's also not afraid to make commentary about the politics in Vietnam, which I don't think Thai really does. Thai has always tried to stay in the middle and not take sides, but the Venerable's more open about his experiences and beliefs, I would say, about what happened during the war. And then the third thing is he believes a lot in reincarnation, and he talks a lot about that. And I was going to say something, and now I lost my train of thought. When we were in Australia, um, he shared some. I was going to tell some story about that. It'll come back to me. So he really believes that, and this was something he shared a lot with my husband, and it was very, very helpful, that if you can practice up until the time of your death, and if you can be practicing while you're dying and very calm and very still, um, and have your Buddha eye open, then it will be good for coming generations. And you essentially, as I understand his teaching, you kind of pick up where you left off. So he was saying, for example, when we were in Australia, that he's not afraid to ordain older people, because the way he sees it, it's just an investment in the future, that no matter how much they can practice in their lifetime as a 60, 70, 80-year-old person, they're just going to come back and have a jump on the game later, and maybe become a monastic as a young person and then have the next whole lifetime to practice. So he has those kind of ideas. Oh yeah. Okay. So I was going to read this one. 34. One night, a monk was reciting the sutra of the teaching bequeathed by the Buddha Kashyapa. The sound of his voice was mournful, and it sounded like he was regretting having become a monk. The Buddha asked him, "In the past, when you were a householder, what did you do?" He replied, "I was fond of playing the lute." The Buddha said, "What happened when the strings of the lute were too loose?" He replied, "They didn't make any sound." "What happened when they were too tight?" He replied, "The strings would break." "What happened when they were tuned just right, not too loose and not too tight?" He replied, "The melody was in tune and pleasant." The Buddha said, "It is the same for practitioners on the path. When the mind is harmonious, the truth is attainable. If they are too tense, their bodies will get tired. When their bodies are tired, their minds are full of afflictions. Afflictions make them backslide. When they backslide, guilt develops. The truth will not be clear unless you can experience mental peace, happiness, and liberation right in this very moment. What you need is relaxation, tranquility, clarity, and delight to reach enlightenment." So many of us have heard that story, or the little parable of the person with the lute, but here we hear it again. I'll just read a few more. 35. The Buddha taught, when metal workers make tools out of iron, they first remove impurities from the metal so the tools will be of high quality. When those who follow the path cleanse their minds of impurities, they will make progress on the path and develop compassion. And this is 38. The Buddha asked a monk, "How long is the lifespan of a human being?" The monk answered, "It is but a few days." The Buddha said, "You do not understand the path." The Buddha asked another monk, "How long is the lifespan of a human being?" "It is the time required for a single meal," was the reply. The Buddha said, "You do not understand the path." The Buddha asked a third monk, "How long is the lifespan of a human being?" The monk answered, "It is the time it takes to inhale and exhale a single breath." The Buddha said, "Excellent, you have understood my teachings." Let's see, I'll read two more. This is 39. The Buddha taught, "Those who study the teachings of the Buddhas will do well to have faith in and practice all that is taught to them. It is like enjoying honey. Whether it is in the middle of the bowl or at the rim of the bowl, the honey is always sweet. The teachings of the Buddhas are the same." So that's another little parable that we've heard before, that the teachings are sweet in the beginning, sweet in the middle, and sweet at the end. I like this one too. Number 40. The Buddha taught, "People who are on the path of practice should not behave like water buffalo plowing a field with their bodies tame but their minds not tame." If we are always cultivating mindfulness, then our bodies will follow. I think that's a typo. I think it should be, if our minds are always, well, I don't remember exactly, but and then the last one is 41. The Buddha taught, "People on the path of practice are like water buffaloes carrying heavy loads through deep mud. No matter how exhausted they are, they keep a steady gaze until they can get free from the mud. Only then can they rest. Practitioners should be even more wary of their own passions and desires than the water buffaloes are of the muddy quagmire. They must be unwavering in their mindfulness and keep their eyes on their spiritual path in order to overcome suffering." So this is a little taste of the sutra, and then, there's just tons of commentary on each chapter, like an hour-long talk on each chapter. And he, he's a storyteller also. He tells a lot of stories, a lot of teaching stories that I really enjoy. One thing he said when we were in Australia was, if you study a sutra a day, every day of your life for 30 years, you still won't read all the sutras of the Buddha. And his point is, like, get busy. start reading a sutra a day. Yeah, I was going to share maybe two more things. Do we have like 5 or 10 more minutes? Yeah. Something I experienced when my husband was sick, and I don't really know how to put this into words, but looking back on it now, I feel like it was some sort of mind-to-mind transmission between the Venerable and myself. And it wasn't in words, because he was speaking in Vietnamese and I didn't know what he was saying when he was saying it. But somehow the way he was saying things, the faith that he had, the non-fear that he had of death. This was right before my husband died, and he was freaking out and I was freaking out. And we went to meet with the Venerable in his tea room, and I remember Bruce's big question to him was, "Am I living or am I dying?" And while he was answering this question in Vietnamese, I sort of had this aha moment. where, again, I didn't really know what he was saying until the person translated it. Um, and ultimately, what he ended up saying was, well, of course you're living. You're sitting here right now talking to me. Of course you're alive. Um, but I think, the fact that he was so willing to help us at that juncture, and he was so not afraid. I mean, he definitely encouraged Bruce to pray to Avalokita. He told some stories about what sounded like miraculous healing things that people had. um, it was pretty clear at that point Bruce wasn't going to heal, but he had such faith, and he also had non-fear. And I think that those things together just really impressed me and made me feel less afraid, and having faith of my own that it was all going to work out, even though what I thought was like a really terrible thing was happening. So that was really beautiful and noteworthy. And the other thing that's really beautiful, some of you have heard this before, but he wrote us a letter when Bruce was sick. And we read it at Bruce's funeral. Let me see if I can quickly find it. It was just really, really beautiful. He wrote, this was about a month before Bruce died. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hillsberg, I'm very happy to write this letter with warm wishes and regards, and to share my experience of the practice with both of you. During the Buddha's time, there was a lay person named Anathapindika. When he was really ill, the Buddha's disciples would come and visit him and teach him about the practice. Anathapindika practiced when he was seriously ill. His breathing was irregular, but within a short period of time of practicing, he found peace and insight. His wisdom eye was opened, and he could taste liberation, nirvana. He left his body lightly, just like someone leaving old and worn out shoes. This is the practice. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I know that eyes, ears, nose, tongue, head, body, arms, and legs are not me. Breathing out, I know that eyes, ears, nose, tongue, head, body, arms, and legs are not me. Breathing in, I know that happiness, sadness, worry, fear, and despair are not me. Breathing out, I know that happiness, sadness, worry, fear, and despair are not me. Breathing in, I know that all the never-ending thoughts are not me. Breathing out, I know that all the never-ending thoughts are not me. And from this practice, slowly we realize that I am not these objects of my observation. I am the observer. I am not the object being observed. I am the awareness. For example, illness is the illness of the body, and the awareness of the illness is not the body. The awareness of the illness is truly not the illness. The awareness is already within us. It is the awareness of no birth, no death. It is infinite light. It is infinite life that is already within us. For a long time, we only think that we are the body. We are the feelings of happiness and sadness. We are the endless thoughts, and therefore we suffer. We have despair and fear. If you just return and become aware that we have the ability to recognize that those feelings are not us, if you have faith and belief in this, right away you can open the eye of wisdom and overcome 1,000 sufferings, just like Anathapindika. With little time and poor knowledge to express myself, but with my sincere heart of a monk, I hope you will both practice diligently. You can read the Discourse on the Teachings to be Given to the Sick in the Plum Village Chanting and Recitation book, so you can practice this more deeply. I pray with the loving energy of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that they will protect and help you to overcome all your difficulties and find wisdom and insight. So that was a precious gift that we received. And I feel very grateful for all the teachings that I've been able to be present for and to be able to try to share some of them. And I think that that letter is very characteristic of his teachings. He really, really encourages the method of being the observer or the witness and seeing things coming and going and not getting caught up as much as possible in the perceptions, feelings, mental formations, consciousness, but rather being a witness to all that and just letting it come and go. And he feels that that's a really big way to practice and find peace. And, and he practices what he preaches. I've spent a lot of time with him, and I've had the good fortune to travel with him, and he's pretty unflappable, even when being like patted down by TSA people. He didn't enjoy it, and he wasn't happy about it, but they took him aside and went through all his luggage and asked him a whole lot of questions. And I think he was annoyed, but he just, stayed as calm as possible. So, I'd be happy to share more. There's a lot more in all of this. I just wanted to give you a taste of it. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I'd be happy to take the last few minutes to hear from you. The books are all available on Amazon or from lulu.com. The first one is Be Like a Tree, and I did all the illustrations myself. Those are talks that he gave at Deer Park. The second one is the 10 Oxherding paintings. And then the third one is the 42 chapter sutra.
I think we have 5 minutes or so for Karen to respond to any questions or comments, and then we'll have about a 5-minute break before we begin our afternoon practice session.
Karen, this is Linda bowing in. It seemed like in the first few that you read, he speaks more of what is important to do and not so much about what not to do. And then he goes into it a little bit more, but is that more of his flavor, or is it just those ones you read to start with that were more like that?
I think that this is just the translation of the sutra. This is the sutra itself. So, like I said, they aren't really in any particular order. And I just chose some that I thought were interesting to share. I don't notice any particular order in them. It seems kind of random to me, but maybe there is some mysterious order in there that I'm not seeing yet.
Well, it wasn't so much the order, it was more, the first one's particular, I heard, oh, that's what we want to go towards and not what we not want to go away from. And so, yeah.
I think he comes at it from both. I think the teachings go both ways. do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. It's yeah, it's just how the sutra reads.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandy buying in. Thank you, Karen. That was what a rich gift you received. But I was just wondering, of the three books, if you were to recommend one for us to start with, is there one that you think would be more readable?
Yeah, this one, Be Like a Tree, is the most readable. These are just talks that he gave at Deer Park that are very applicable to everyday life. And they give a really good sense of his style and his teaching. Um, their talks on parenting and meditation and our purpose in life, gratitude, happiness and letting go. So yeah, I would start with that one, Be Like a Tree.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Karen, this is Carolyn bowing in. Thank you so much for sharing this. And I was very moved by the letter. And it just feels, I mean, you can just feel his incredible devotion there. And it must have been really a blessing to have his presence around the loss. And I was reminded, I won't tell a story here, but I lost a brother to cancer. My brother was not a Buddhist, although he was certainly searching at the time he died. But I remember one night at the hospital when he was very sick, but his son and I went to see him, and he suddenly said, "I am full of wonder." And something about that came back to me when you read the letter. Like in that moment, it's like my brother was a witness and full of wonder, and it felt like gratitude at the time, even in this very precipitous situation. And I was very moved by the letter and the rest. Thank you.
Karen, I'm guessing that some of his beliefs, perhaps you don't share them fully. I don't know. We've never talked about that. But I'm wondering if that is the case. For instance, some of the reincarnation ideas. How do you practice with that in terms of how does that affect your practice with the other parts? Because I see them as quite integral to the practice of when you have such a deep belief in such clear reincarnation that that's kind of foundational to the recommendations for practice in some ways. So what happens if you don't happen to share that?
I don't think I have a good, quick, pithy answer for that. I guess I'll just say that I'm not so sure what happens, and so I don't rule it out. My ideas about life and death have certainly changed a lot since I started the practice, and Ty's ideas about what happens after we die and the Venerable's ideas are both compelling and maybe not so much in conflict. And I wouldn't say that Ty doesn't believe in reincarnation. I think he just doesn't talk about it. He doesn't focus on it. He doesn't want to distract from his other teachings with that, but I'm not sure that he doesn't believe in that in some way. So I'll think about it and see if I can come up with a better answer for another time. But thank you. Great question. Karen bowing out.